Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 36. The thickest admirer's lens appeared. A completely ordinary rooftop, now turned peculiar due to the presence of 3 undercover agents, a cat, and an innocent passerby. As an FBI agent undercover in the black organization, Akai Shuichi looked at the other 3 people, who all seemed to recognize one another, and inexplicably felt isolated. Strange, he was supposed to be here to rescue the undercover agent from the Japanese police, the one feeling helpless should be Scotch. So why had it turned into this instead? Akai Shuichi subtly observed Bourbon, who was following after him, then inferred Bourbon's attitude based on Scotch's expressions, confirming that this person was likely on the same side as Scotch. As for the boy who suddenly appeared, if he had been before they came, then it was probably a coincidence. Bourbon also seemed genuinely shocked, indicating that the boy wasn't supposed to be there, and had no connection to the organization. Well, that made things easier. I am an FBI investigative officer. Akai Shuichi was faced with 2 guns pointed at him, and he decisively chose to reveal his identity. Otherwise, he feared that he might be dealt with by the person he attempted to rescue and his accomplice. Such a scenario would indeed be the greatest joke, an injustice that would make him die with regrets. I'm here to save Scotch. My partner is already nearby, ready to stage his death at any moment. Amuro Toru remained vigilant without lowering his gun, maintaining his loyal member persona to the liquor factory. So you're a traitor too? Akai Shuichi. Stop with the script, and perhaps more sincerity. Komaeda Nagito's gaze swept across the entire scene, from one person to another, feeling that everyone seemed to shine with brilliance talents, FBI, and undercover. Amuro-san must be a police officer, right? He's really too lucky. The wounds on his face didn't seem to hurt anymore. Although I'm not really sure what's going on. Komaeda Nagito chuckled as he chimed in, but now isn't the time to waste time, you gentlemen should be quite clear on this point, right? The 3 gentlemen fell silent. He does have a point. But why does it sound inexplicably annoying? Komaeda Nagito broke the tense atmosphere, and after that, everything went much more smoothly. They quickly began discussing how to deceive the organization with relevant information, while Komaeda Nagito stayed in the background, continuing to chase after the stray cat. Amuro-san. It's coming your way. Amuro Toru sighed as he turned around, blocking the exit to the rooftop. He bent down and scooped the cat up into his arms with one hand. There. He used his expert cat-soothing techniques to calm down the overly energetic cat, then handed the now peaceful cat over to Komaeda Nagito. Feeling like the atmosphere didn't seem quite right. Why were the 3 undercover agents discussing how to fake a death on site, and why was there a teenager chasing a cat? Ah, tough work. Komaeda Nagito, with scratch marks on his face, smiled brightly and said, as much as I'd love to stay, the elderly landlord must be getting worried by now. Since the cat's been found, I'll head downstairs first. Komaeda-kun, leave the building after 5 minutes, and don't tell anyone about what happened here. Amuro Toru couldn't just let someone who witnessed everything leave like that, even if it was someone whose background had been thoroughly investigated. If it wasn't for knowing that there were still people waiting for Komaeda Nagito along with the cat, and that if he didn't return soon they'd come looking for him, in fact, he would rather take Komaeda Nagito away right now, ensure his safety, and then release him, or directly put him on protective custody. Komaeda Nagito pondered, 5 minutes. I get it. Basically, it wasn't time for unnecessary conversation, the implication was to hurry up and go down, right? Receiving his mission, Komaeda Nagito swiftly ran down the stairs. Going down was much easier than going up, so it only took him a minute. He arrived at the place where the door was still ajar, knocked directly, and entered. Amid the landlord's surprised expression, Komaeda Nagito handed the cat back to him. The landlord felt truly embarrassed as he looked at Komaeda Nagito's injured face. This injury. I'm really sorry. Should I apply some medicine for you? Sorry, just now my classmate called saying they were coming to my house to find me, so I can't keep them waiting. I have to leave now, Komaeda Nagito made up an excuse casually. Where's the contract? Let's just sign it now. The landlord was surprised, leaving in such a hurry. Fine, take the contract home and look it over carefully. Someone else will be here in a moment to repair the lock, and things are a bit chaotic here. Let's schedule another time. Good, thank you. Komaeda Nagito cheerfully agreed, rolled up the contract, stuffed it into his bag, and then immediately dashed downstairs at full speed. As he neared the first floor, his phone suddenly rang. Komaeda-kun. Amuro Toru spoke on the other end of the call. Right now, act as normal, go to the convenience store across the street, buy a bottle of drink, take your time picking it out, and keep an eye on your phone for any messages. Komaeda Nagito didn't ask when Amuro Toru had gotten his phone number. After all, just like Dazai-kun, it was probably through some illegal means, so he readily agreed, all right. He was helping Hope. For such a person like him, who should have nothing to do with lifelong espionage battles like the FBI, somehow had the chance to help an undercover agent escape, it was simply too lucky. Truly startled by the unexpected favor, Komaeda Nagito obediently walked towards the convenience store as instructed and after that, stood for a while in front of the beverage section, studying it for quite some time. He received a message, went to pay, and stepped outside to hail a cab. After following the instructions, a taxi pulled up in front of the convenience store. Komaeda Nagito immediately got in the car, noticing that the driver was someone unfamiliar, but the person in the back seat, wearing a hat that covered most of his face, was none other than the young man known as Scotch. Morofushi Hiromitsu looked somewhat serious, as if he was pondering over some difficult issue, but upon seeing Komaeda Nagito enter the car, he still gave him a gentle smile. Don't worry, Morofushi Hiromitsu said. The driver is one of us, and the taxi is just a disguise. The other two are responsible for cleanup, while we just need to ensure our movements aren't exposed. There's no surveillance in this area. So he was able to escape in this direction, since directly running into the surveillance was essentially courting death. Although he wasn't part of the intelligence division within the Black organization, as an undercover agent, he had received a lot of relevant training. It could be said that any place he had ever been to, the locations of surveillance points were etched in his memory. This habit helped him eliminate traces and suspicious points at this moment, making it easier to fabricate the scene along with his childhood friend and that FBI. Komaeda Nagito asked obediently, "Where are you taking me?" On this topic, Morofushi Hiromitsu's expression turned a bit awkward. We're currently heading to Yokohama, to your place. Before, Amuro Toru was tasked with investigating the port mafia on behalf of the Black organization, confirming the existence of powerful ability users. Moreover, due to Dazai Osamu's warning, delivered in person as an executive candidate, the Black organization had decided to temporarily halt business operations on the Yokohama side, which indeed was a significant favor to them. The Black organization wouldn't easily believe the body of Scotch, presented by Akai Shuichi and Amuro Toru. They were bound to investigate what had happened before and after the incident thoroughly. In terms of constructing a consistent narrative, those two were quite proficient. However, the Black organization would certainly send someone to secretly investigate if anyone unusual had been in the vicinity, in a place they normally shouldn't be. Komaeda Nagito came to check out the apartment, leaving before Scotch's time of death. Later, due to the lack of nearby buses and the Shinkansen being a bit far away, he just took a taxi home. After all, even if they trusted that Komaeda Nagito wouldn't casually reveal anything, according to procedure, surveillance was still necessary. Otherwise, it would be hard to write the report, and if those higher-ups found out later, it would only create more trouble for Komaeda Nagito. It's better to just follow the procedure now, and then submit a report saying there's no need to worry, those above wouldn't have any other reaction. At times like this, Komaeda Nagito's not-so-poor family background was a huge help. If it were an ordinary junior high school student from a normal family, taking a taxi all the way from Tokyo to Yokohama would definitely be suspicious behavior. No matter what, from the perspective of the black organization, Komaeda Nagito's suspicions could essentially be dismissed, and the convenience store's surveillance footage could help him clear his name. Especially with that innocent-looking face and fresh cat scratch marks, it looked so pitifully innocent that it was almost deadly. Anyone with even a bit of trained combat skills wouldn't be scratched up like that by a cat. Even someone as paranoid as Jin, upon watching the surveillance footage, would only be left speechless seeing Komaeda Nagito in that state. However, even if it was done with good intentions, directly sending someone home with this sort of implicit threat really couldn't be justified. Morofushi Hiromitsu spoke apologetically, "I'm sorry for causing you trouble, but you can't refuse." "No problem. I didn't intend to refuse in the first place," Komaeda Nagito said with a kind of joy that Morofushi Hiromitsu couldn't understand. "If there's anything else you need my cooperation with, please feel free to ask. It's my honor to help you all." Today, chasing after the cat onto the rooftop was really such good luck. No, if you encounter something like this in the future, it's best to run away as far as possible. Morofushi Hiromitsu, in an educational tone aimed at a child's sense of adventure and excitement, said seriously, "You really shouldn't have stuck your head out just now. It would have been better to keep hiding there." "No, it feels like that wouldn't have worked either. If that FBI agent was actually a bad guy, he'd definitely check the area after leaving. In that case, he would still discover you, so indeed, it would be better to run quickly when his back is turned." As he spoke, Morofushi Hiromitsu sighed. It was precisely because he considered Akai Shuichi at that time to be a bad person capable of any evil that he temporarily gave up on immediately taking his own life out of concern for Komaeda Nagito. Although based on the education he had received so far, in truth, he should have decisively destroyed his phone and committed suicide at that moment, to prevent intel from falling into enemy hands. As for involving innocent civilians, that was just an unavoidable sacrifice. After all, to save one person at the cost of intel leaking could possibly end up killing even more people. But even if he had always performed well in his studies, to abandon an innocent child like that, he found himself still hesitating. Luckily, right afterward, Akai Shuichi revealed himself as an FBI agent, and his childhood friend arrived in time, sparing him from further inner turmoil. Otherwise, although he was willing to sacrifice himself for his country, if he caused the death of an innocent child due to a poor choice of escape route, even in death, he would be filled with regret and unable to find peace. In short, don't put yourself in danger. Always prioritize protecting your own life. Leave dangerous matters to us adults. Morofushi Hiromitsu concluded, then asked, "You should quickly treat the injuries on your face. Shall I help?" Komaeda Nagito hurriedly replied, "I can do it myself." "You can't see where the wounds are. Let me do it." Morofushi Hiromitsu bent down, pulled out a hidden compartment, took out a small box, and opened it to reveal a first aid kit. He picked a vial of medicine and grabbed a pack of cotton swabs, planning to treat Komaeda Nagito's wounds in the car. Morofushi Hiromitsu's reasoning made sense. Komaeda Nagito wasn't someone particularly difficult, so he obediently closed his eyes, lifted his head, and waited for Morofushi Hiromitsu to apply the medicine. "Alright, when we get back, let's get a vaccine shot just in case," Morofushi Hiromitsu sighed in relief, then frowned again, taking out his phone to check it, seemingly waiting for some news. The incident hadn't settled yet. Whether they managed to deceive the black organization or not would depend on the situation over the next 2 days. After checking his phone and confirming that there wasn't anything wrong on his end, Morofushi Hiromitsu looked up at Komaeda Nagito and said, "Alright, next up is about your situation." Komaeda Nagito sat up a bit straighter. "Please continue." Before he could finish his words, his phone suddenly rang. Komaeda Nagito glanced at the caller ID, feeling somewhat puzzled. This person rarely had time off, and usually didn't actively contact him. Why would they be calling him now? Morofushi Hiromitsu gestured for him to go ahead and answer, and Komaeda Nagito picked up the call. "Inspector Hagiwara?" Upon hearing this very familiar surname, Morofushi Hiromitsu's gaze underwent a subtle shift. No, the Hagiwara surname wasn't exactly rare. But if you were talking about a police officer with the name Hagiwara, Komai Dakuin, Hagiwara Kenji, who could be considered half a mentor to Komai Nagito, asked over the phone, "Are you still at XXXX Street?" Komai Nagito, hearing his previous address mentioned, suddenly remembered. Because the landlord had rushed him to move out too abruptly, and he hadn't found a stable place to stay yet, he hadn't told Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei about it. After all, although he had always kept them informed about his address, they had never actually visited his home. They probably just wanted to confirm through information that nothing had happened to his place, so notifying them of the address change didn't seem that urgent. "No, I've already moved out. The landlord wanted to sell the property and pushed me to move out rather quickly." "Is that so?" Hagiwara Kenji sighed in relief on the other end of the phone. "Jinpei and I happened to have today off, and while we were passing by your area, we felt the atmosphere wasn't quite right. We were worried that you might have gotten yourself into some trouble again." Rather than saying it wasn't aligned with their intuition, it would be more accurate to say it was dangerous. Only those who had undergone training could feel that kind of discomfort, the sensation of being watched from all directions. Considering Komai Nagito's misfortune's constitution, the two of them immediately left that strange area on the spot and found a small alley to call Komai Nagito, just to make sure nothing had happened to this unlucky kid once again. Actually, that matter over there has nothing to do with me." Komai Nagito, restricted by the confidentiality agreement, couldn't directly talk about Ayatsuji Yukito's situation and could only vaguely say, "I've already moved away, which means they don't care about me." The rest is the content of the confidentiality agreement. Mentioning the confidentiality agreement, the two police officers on the other side of the phone immediately understood. This unlucky kid really got dragged into troublesome matters again. "Well, as long as he's alright, that's good." With mixed feelings, Hagiwara Kenji gave a few advices before hanging up the phone. Probably that detective neighbor of his, Masuda Jinpei, who had been listening silently, suddenly spoke. Even Komai moved away, there's no reason for that detective agency to still be running. "I think so too," Hagiwara Kenji tossed his phone. "If he's just a neighbor, then it has nothing to do with us. Let's go. The store we're looking for should not be far from here." Continuing this pursuit recklessly would get them dragged in for questioning as well. It's better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Masuda Jinpei nodded in agreement. Compared to the two police academy classmates who quickly settles their worries, Morofushi Hiromitsu, who was besides Komai Nagito, couldn't just walk away as easily. Since he's a spy, eavesdropping is an essential skill, and his ability to catch even the tiniest of sounds has to be very high. When adjusting firearms, even the slightest abnormal noise needs to be detected, or else it could lead to major incidents. With such exceptional hearing, Morofushi Hiromitsu was very certain that the voice on the other end of the phone was indeed Hagiwara Kenji, someone he knew well, who was also a mutual friend of his and his childhood friend Furuya. This was just too much of a coincidence. Morofushi Hiromitsu pressed his temples, looking at Komai Nagito in confusion. "How do you know the police officer who just called you?" Komai Nagito then talked a bit about the apartment explosion from a few years ago. Morofushi Hiromitsu also knew about that incident, as it almost ended up killing Hagiwara Kenji. Even after he went undercover and could no longer read external non-work-related messages, his old friends still often sent updates. It was through a rant-filled message from Masuda Jinpei aimed at Hagiwara Kenji that he learned about this incident. He never expected that the child mentioned in that message would turn out to be Komai Nagito. From the outcome, if it wasn't for Komai Nagito, he might not have made it and could have ended up taking his own life. In a way, Komai Nagito also saved his life. Morofushi Hiromitsu looked at Komai Nagito with even more tenderness and gratitude in his eyes. Although it was just a coincidence, this child did save him and his friend, essentially becoming their lucky star. For now, they definitely needed to stay hidden, act low-key, and probably wouldn't be able to come out for a while to avoid the organization finding any clues. But once there's an opportunity in the future, he must repay this child. Morofushi Hiromitsu thought to himself. After Komaeda Nagito finished talking about his relations with Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei, he smiled and asked, Scotch-san, do you know Inspector Hagiwara and Inspector Masuda? Just call me Morofushi. Morofushi Hiromitsu didn't really like the title that represents his position in the organization. Yes, we were classmates. Ah, well, that's really quite the coincidence. Komaeda Nagito said, looking toward Morofushi Hiromitsu with a somewhat evaluative gaze. Though it's not exactly pleasant to think this way, his luck mostly seemed to apply to himself. Saving Hagiwara Kenji and this Morofushi police officer were just incidental occurrences. Still, the fact that they survived under the influence of his luck, at the very least, indicated they had some worth, didn't it? Moreover, the two of them actually knew each other. This made the coincidence seem a bit too convenient. Yet why did he end up knowing so many police officers? What exactly was his luck trying to tell him? Komaeda Nagito abandoned the thought. Anyway, once things actually happened, he'd probably figure out what the benefit was. With Amuro Toru's introduction earlier saying there was no need to worry too much, plus Hagiwara Kenji and Masuda Jinpei having known Komaeda Nagito for many years, if there were really any issues, they would have noticed long ago. When Morofushi Hiromitsu was giving instructions to Komaeda Nagito, his attitude was quite relaxed, as if he was full of trust in him, knowing exactly what he should and shouldn't say. As for Komaeda Nagito, who has signed a pile of confidentiality agreements since childhood, he handled this situation with ease, nodding as he listened, without raising any questions. And then, although it's likely that the organization will stop their investigation into you at the Tokyo level and abandon their suspicions, there's still a possibility they'll follow up here. If we arrange protection around you too tightly, it will instead make the organization suspicious. Moreover, considering the unique situation in Yokohama, if someone suspicious comes to investigate later, you will have to be extra careful on your own. Morofushi Hiromitsu gave instructions with great care, as if he were dealing with his own younger brother. This is an emergency contact. I set it on your number 0 speed dial, but honestly, if you need to use it, it might already be too late. I hope you'll never have to use it. Komaeda Nagito took back his phone, nodding to show he understood clearly. Be careful when making calls from home for the time being. After another round, your TV will break down, and someone will come to fix it. At that time, they'll help you clean up a bit of your little toys. By the time this explanation was given, they had reached Komaeda Nagito's home. Morofushi Hiromitsu had no intention of getting out of the car with him. He smiled and waved at Komaeda Nagito. We'll talk again when there's a chance in the future. We'll meet again, and at that time, I'll thank you properly. Hurry home, and stay safe. Similar to the suspension bridge effect, it led to Morofushi Hiromitsu subconsciously looking at Komaeda Nagito with a filter of affection, feeling that Komaeda Nagito was actually quite easy to communicate with. Occasionally, when Komaeda said things like, "Hope, please let me be your stepping stone, I don't matter, as long as I can help you guys, it's all good," and other such comments that made Amuro Toru get a headache, Morofushi just found them rather normal. When a kid tries so hard to help out, it's really adorable, Morofushi couldn't help but comment as he watched Komaeda Nagito head back home. The driver, who had listened to the entire conversation without wearing a filter. Inspector Morofushi, are you sure about that? Why do I feel like the way that kid talks and behaves is so weird? The driver silently thought to himself that, when reporting back, he must remind them to carefully conduct a psychological evaluation of Inspector Morofushi. It seemed that Inspector Morofushi had been undercover for too long, and the mental pressure was too much, almost like there was some psychological issue. It was just about signing a rental agreement, but somehow Komaeda Nagito ended up being conveniently driven back without really understanding why. Soon enough, he pushed the matter out of his mind. After all, no matter how he looked at it, this issue had nothing to do with him. He was just a passerby and felt there wasn't anything he could help with. Besides, Inspector Morofushi clearly had no intention of letting him assist anyway. Moreover, if he really were to be followed by that strange organization, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing for him, so there was no need to be overly vigilant. To Komai de Nagito, what was more important now was repaying Kudo Shinichi. After getting home, he put down his school bag and started researching how to find a suitable detective novel for Kudo Kohai. After browsing the forum for quite a while, Komai de Nagito decided to make a post to ask for recommendations. May I ask if there are any relatively unknown but genuinely skilled detective novelists that haven't published their work yet? It seems like those with some talent usually already have a publishing history. Post content. Even in this original forum post area, if the writing is not bad, it's already been contacted for publication. I just want to know if there's anyone who writes really well but their work hasn't been published yet. A user with the ID Little Raccoon replied. There is. Chapter 36 End.